Hello and welcome to the fourth tutorial on materials and the world. In this tutorial we'll be covering different materials that you can assign to objects to give them a different look, whether they just look like plastic or metal. Starting off here, I've created a plane so that if we look from the front, that pretty much sits level at 0 on the z-axis, and then we've got the standard cube sitting on top. Now each material, in this case for the plane, doesn't have anything assigned to it, so it gets given a basic plain white material, whereas the cube has a starter material. I've already added 0.5 to its metallic on the side there. This is all contained underneath the materials properties tab along the side. So if we wanted, I could change metallic to up to 1, and you can see a bit more reflection. If I bring in a second cube of 1mm and bring that out there, if I go to the camera, but you can see there's a bit of a reflection there. You can see that cube there. If we change the roughness now down to 0, we'll get a full reflection, almost like it was chrome. So depending on how you want the roughness of the surface to be, whether it's just brushed metal or until you get that right level of reflectance, I mean, you can go all the way up to 1 and it's pretty much like a plain cube again with a bit of reflection there. There are a lot of other settings, a lot to do with color and the way light bounces off things. From here you can also add how much light is transmitted through the object. So now we've got it slightly sort of glass-like. If I move that to the other side, then due to refraction it actually hides it quite a bit. And move these around. I'm using G and then pressing Y or X to change the axis it's locked to. So you can see how light is affected. So if I set that down to 0 again, we can see it becomes a solid object. If you click on base color, you can then use a color wheel to alter what color you've got there. Bring up the metallic again and you get a nice sort of yellow. Depending on the look, you can start to create sort of all combinations to create bronze, to create gold. So here we have a gold block. If I push tab to go into edit mode, select edge select, there we go, that's all of them selected. I'll switch back to shader just so things don't jump about too much. Control B for the bevel, and I'm just going to make it so that things are a bit more interesting to look at. Now this is just the basic route into working with materials just on this side here. If I swap that out of there, if I go to the shading tab at the top, what we have here is the nodes that make up this material. So for each material we have on the side, that's here, you can actually drag that down and add multiple materials. We'll do that in a second. We have here is the material output. And so from here, if I disconnect that there, and you just click with the mouse to drag and create these. So if you go Shift A, you can bring up the menu and it can bring up textures, and we're going to choose a Voronoi texture. But what we got with this, if we drag the color to base color, then these are procedurally generated textures. So depending on the 3D space, it'll generate a different color across there. This is the Voronoi one. If I take the distance and put that in color, you get a different effect like that, almost a cell-like structure. Now what I can do is I can take the color to the base color there and take the distance and then drag that across to the metallic, and it gives everything a neat little sheen. Other settings that you can see on the Voronoi texture, if we change the scale to 10, we can see that they get smaller. So if I set it to 1, we get quite large, 20, quite small. If we attach a noise texture there, but if we take the color, we can show how that goes from there. Let's reduce the scale back to 5 and we can see how the metallic is being affected. But what we've got now is pretty much a very noisy sort of surface. What we can do is take that and add it onto displacement for the material output, and we get a nice rough texture. In this case, it's made it almost look like a proper gold. We can change that to the scale to a 10. Now from there we can also add the factor to the metallic, then change the color to there. And you can just mix all of these together. It's a brilliant little system. And from here you can really construct all sorts of different types of surfaces. Now with this in place, we can stay in this screen, but what we can do is come over to the right, click on the plus button, and we can add another material to this object. If you had a vehicle like a pickup truck from the second tutorial, you can select the different areas which represent the windows of the pickup truck, and you can add in a glass material. In this case we're just going to add a completely new one. Now to assign these materials we have to go into edit mode. So if I keep it in camera because it's all focused, and if you give it a moment, it'll come up with the texture. It won't be neatly lit, but at least it'll actually show you what pattern you've got. So if I press tab, make sure I've got faces selected, and I'll left click on that, hold down shift, and then left click on the others. Now from here what it'll always do is select the material of the first face you selected. So I can click on second material, click on assign, and now we've got it that material is assigned there to just those faces. So I'll go back in. I'm going to rotate this object a little bit, so R and Z to lock at the Z axis, and just move the mouse to rotate there. One thing to note as well is as you click between the material and second material, it changes the nodes in the middle. So we're going to turn this into a kind of a glass material. So we scroll down and change transmission to 1. It'll only show a sort of grey like that because we're currently only in material preview. So if we go across to rendered, it'll take a while to build up because it's bouncing a light around on the inside. Let's see if we can improve that. If we go back to that object and select that side, go out of camera, select that side, and then assign that there. There we go. If we go back into rendered, we can start to see some of the light coming through. Now here, if I select the light, so you can click on that and you can see it's got an emission material assigned to it. So this is a light output and emission. So normally emission would be in the shader area, and we can just change its strength to say 10, and it does overwhelm the scene. If things seem a bit washed out, we can actually go across to the render properties and go down to color management, and what we need to do is change the view transform across to filmic log and the sequencer if it's not already on filmic log on there, and that just allows a wider range of colors than what you'd normally get with a standard RGB, red, green, blue. So if we go across to here, RGB, you've got a value from 0 to 1, and with filmic log we're getting high dynamic range. If I change that to standard, you can see how that area gets completely washed out, whereas a filmic log, it gives a chance for all the colors to come through. While we're here, if we click that, untick that, so it brings in the background world there. Before it would show the little checkered pattern, just to show that if you were to generate this as a picture, you would get that as transparent. But we want the background in, because now if I move back to layout, we're going to switch to working with the background world itself. So you can see here is just a very grey scene. If I click on the circle here, it'll bring up a set of options. Now you can choose sky texture. It won't appear here. We've actually got to go to this drop down menu here and click on scene world, and it'll show everything behind it. Let's do that one as well, scene lighting. So we've got here, it's all a bit washed out at the moment, it's all a bit bright, but if we go across the shading, and it'll build up. Now from here we can change that brightness to 0.5. With that halved, the brightness level goes down, but we can see if we rotate the scene, we have got a sky-like texture. We can see a horizon there, and then the sky gets bluer. So this is quite handy if you just want to do a simple scene and you want some sort of background. What you can also do is change from sky texture to environment texture. Now, nothing's loaded in, and what we can do is the website I found the other day, which is HDRI Haven, and I've pulled this scene from there. You can download it in different sizes. I downloaded the 8K version, and if I load that one in, right, when you click on the open thing, you'll get a file browser, and you can browse to wherever you've stored it. In this case, I've got hk.hdr. If you open the image, give it a little while, and it should load that scene in. So now if you move around, you'll see a nice scenery in the background. And it's a fully wraparound scene. So if you press 0 to go into your camera, go to view, and then choose lock camera to view, you can then change where the camera will follow where you look around. Now this will take a bit of practice. There we go. I clicked on one of the axes. And now what's happening, this entire scene is supplying the lighting. If we've got this light here, if I actually delete it, let the scene update a little bit. Now these shadows, even though they're on the picture, you still get the shadow there on this flat plane. And that is because it is using the sun up there as the light source. So these environments like this are really good out of the camera. So if we go to item and we'll change the y-axis here to 0, push full stop on the keyboard, choose 3D cursor. So now when we rotate around something, it'll always go around the 3D cursor. So now with the camera selected, we press R and Z, and we can rotate around here a little bit. Now material preview is quite good because we can still see the background. What I'm going to do is push tab on this material, switch to vertices, push scale, and just so that it covers all of there, because what we're going to do is turn this plane into a shadow catcher. We go to object properties, visibility, and then we can click on the option for shadow catcher. Now we won't see much difference here, but if we now go across to preview, we can see that it has disappeared and it allows the sand to come through, but we still have the shadows. If I push G and move that across, we can build a scene with our objects which appear to be put into the scene behind us. So from now we can have fun just building up the complexity of this scene. If I click on that plane again, go across to shading, make sure that, yes, we need to have a material assigned to this. So I click on new, but what we want to do, if I bring that down, it's the same way earlier where we did a slightly rough texture on there. We're going to do the same again. So texture, noise. So we take the factor, move it to displacement, and we can see there on that preview there how it's changed. Now you can sort of guess what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get a kind of a rough pattern on there to match the sand. And you can have hours of fun just trying to play with things to get things just right. That looks okay. Let's add in some extra online with that. So Shift A, and we're going to go to converter and choose math. If we move that box over the line, it turns brighter, and what that means is that if we click, it'll add it in between. Now what we're going to do, now at the moment it's set to add, we want to have multiply, so it'll take that first value and multiply it by the second. I'm going to change that to 2 because it's going to take that factor, times it by 2, and because it's going to displacement, it makes it seem taller. Now we can see there's a bit too much weirdness on there. Let's change detail to 0, and that's already looking like nice sand already. Now this will affect the shadows being caught by this material, and will make it hopefully look a bit more in the scene, so to speak. So you can see that it has had an effect. If I go up to view, untick that because it can get frustrating. So it has had effect on it. It doesn't line up with the sand, so maybe if you had took a render of this and converted it to a normal map, you should be able to get a more realistic sand effect. But from there you can push F12 on your keyboard, or you can go to render image. If I bring it across to the main screen, it loads in various things and then it slowly builds up the tiles of the image. And there we have it. We have the final render. You get the idea on how you can use a shadow capture with a textured surface to try and match what the underlying background is. And with that, thank you for watching and see you in the next tutorial.